We're going to have a panel here to talk about some of the issues around opportunities and ways that small business solutions can be built and what developers in the room can do. What we're going to do is have a quick introduction from our speakers. We'll keep it really brief. Avi, we already know, so I'll skip you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Hemant Taneja. I'm a partner at General Catalyst, which is a venture capital firm. And we've been investing quite a bit in the small business area, including Gusto and Fundbox and Stripe and others.
So he's the guy you ask for money.
Hello, I am David from Expensify. We do expense reports that don't suck. It's a bold vision, but we're improving the world one expense report at a time. Just like you'd use Bill.com for your bills or Receipt Bank for your receipts, you use Expensify for your expense reports. That's right.
He's the guy you use for a model for when you want to pitch.
And they're the ones that did that trip with the whole team.
Was it
we
you
just
guys?
took our whole company over to Cambodia for a month.
Yeah, was you?
It was wonderful. So if you ever
I
want to
read the
take your
blog
company
post,
overseas, let me know, and I can give you all sorts of advice on what not to do.
And they're probably hiring.
And we are definitely hiring for all the developers in this room. Jobs at Expensify.com. Please come talk to me.
Josh, we know you.
Hi, my name is Mahesh Chukpali. I lead incubation at Google for Work, which is a group that sells B2B products, the enterprise products. And I've been at Google for 9 years.
And Google had some interesting news come out in the last couple of days around the Google for Work marketplace stuff. There you go.
And I'm Steve King. I'm a partner at Emergent Research. We're a research and consulting firm focused on studying the small business sector of the global economy.
Awesome, nice. Steve, I'll start with you. You did some research recently for Intuit. And what was interesting there is, it used to be in the day that small businesses would use one solution, their accounting solution or maybe accounting solution and email and CRM or something. But increasingly there is this diverse, dichotomous world where people are using a bunch of different apps. What do you think is going on there, and what do you think is going to happen going forward?
There's a couple things going on. Clearly, the shift to the cloud and mobile computing, Avi talked a bit about that this morning, is driving the shift to increasing number of app usage by small businesses. The second driver is the shift towards the quantified small business, data and analytics, and using data analytics in a small business setting. We were at a pool servicing company the other day, 7 employees, the owner. It was really interesting. He's now installed sensors in the pools that he monitors, and they send information on when the pool needs to be cleaned. He has telematics systems in his 4 trucks that he uses so that he can track where they are and better route them. And he just installed an inventory system in his warehouse to help them understand when he needs to order new parts and chemicals for his business. So there you have a very simple business. Pool servicing, historically not considered a tech-savvy business, and he's running his whole business using multiple apps. And so you got a real app shift there. We also dug into the data a little bit, and we discovered a real age differential. Small businesses owned by older small business owners, people like my age, 50 and over. I like to say 50 and over. I'm kind of a little older than that, but 50 and over. They actually use about half the applications of small businesses run by owners who are under the age of 35. And if you're a small business owner and you're 50 and older, over half of them don't use any mobile applications at all. And so when we kind of forecast out 5 to 10 years, what's going to happen is naturally those older small business owners will start to retire, replaced by younger ones. So you have a demographic shift that's also increasing this. And then the third thing we found was product companies, product-based companies, whether they're manufacturing or some sort of retail-based product where they ship products across their system. They use apps a lot less, and I think that's because they're less available and there hasn't been the data to build apps for that. And what we're seeing now is with the Internet of Things and sensors and other smart objects, we're going to start to see product companies sort of equalize with the higher utilization rate that service companies have. And underneath all that are the platforms out there that now make it easy to seamlessly integrate your data, share your data across these applications, things like QuickBooks Online. So you're seeing a number of shifts happen all at the same time, all of which are leading to greatly increased use of applications by small businesses.
Which is all a massive opportunity for everyone in this room, because there may have been room for 20, 30, 40 solutions a few years ago. Today we've seen the hundreds that are in the marketplace. But if you extrapolate forward, see the work that Intuit's doing in terms of surfacing the right add-ons for particular use cases, particular customers, there's just going to be a world of opportunity. I think an interesting thing is that, Mahesh, you guys obviously, reintroduced your marketplace, and you're doing a lot of work to really help with that sort of personalization, of surfacing the best solutions for particular customers. You're Google, arguably you're big enough to not need anyone else, but yet you see the value from the ecosystem. Can you talk to us a little bit about your thinking around how important the ecosystem is for you as a massive player?
Yeah, I'll slightly change what your perception of Google not needing anybody else. I mean, that is clearly untrue. That is the learning. Customers definitely want to, part of our mission, we say, is we want to help customers work the way they live. And they have already clearly chosen the way they want to live is by choosing their own best-of-breed applications. They want to choose multiple environments and experiences, but they, of course, want an integrated experience, like Avi is saying. And Google and any other big company can never reach out to that population and actually serve all the needs. In addition to talking about how we develop the marketplace and what kind of offering we present to the small business developers, I can tell you, honestly, the amount of bureaucracy that you have to go through when you're a large enterprise is unbelievable. So I actually envy you guys. Like I said, I incubate products and ideas and prototypes inside the company. And in spite of having the mandate to move fast and be nimble, it is just impossible. And also, like Avi was saying, he was talking a lot about platforms, right? Most of the large companies are in the platform businesses. They just cannot address all kinds of vertical use cases, all kinds of niche use cases that small businesses need help with. So that's why we need a vibrant ecosystem. So our marketplace, we have like more than 750 partners who develop applications. We have like 200 million user installs so far. And it's growing. It's growing, almost the last time we shared this stat, it was growing 50% year over year in terms of participation. And when we look at the kinds of responses the businesses are able to get, they're getting 4 times as much conversion rates in terms of getting leads from the marketplace. They're getting twice as much engagement. Their customer lifetime value is higher by almost 50% when they acquire customers through the Google ecosystem. And that's not surprising because Google is playing on the shift to the cloud, shift to mobile, shift that is undergoing. And a lot of customers who are seriously looking at how did Google transform themselves into a business of this magnitude, they're trying to emulate a lot of that. And we are trying to make it easy for people to find more small business applications that are actually helping with that journey, with that transformation, who are extending our capabilities and building on top of our capabilities and connecting with us.
Sure.
I was just going to add, I think, to kind of add to the point that both these gentlemen just made, I think one of the trends that they're also alluding to is, to build a great new business, I always say it has 2 parts. You have to have a great product, great go-to-market. And on the go-to-market side, small businesses have historically been very hard to acquire in a cost-effective way. And I think probably one of the biggest shifts that's happened is it's less of a push relationship, more of a pull relationship, meaning small business owners now are not waiting for someone to come tell them what they should try and use. They're searching on Google, they're searching in a marketplace, they're using their phone, they're sharing on social media, they're asking their friend or fellow business owner, what are you trying out? And if it's not working for them, they're changing to something else because that transition process now is much cleaner and simpler. You're not on 2-year contracts, you're pay-as-you-go, monthly subscription, either help me or I will leave you. And that transparency, that simplicity, I think is amazing. Again, not something that was possible 10 or 15 years ago, is a huge part of what's propelling a lot of our businesses forward and hopefully yours as well.
That's interesting because what we're seeing is that all these marketplaces, and obviously there's 2 represented up here, mean there's a plethora of apps that are all competing. And something that you two, David and Josh, you guys are competing in an increasingly busy space, and the pressure is on your investors demand certain amounts of growth and whatever. And I'm just thinking about the pressure that you have inside your organization and how you balance that with the cultural thing. And you guys went to Cambodia, which is awesome, but we can't sort of gild the lily. The fact is that life is very stressful within startups and started ups. How do you think about balancing the pressures of having to execute and there being absolutely no option about that with we're all human beings and we kind of have to sort of survive past the weekend.
Well, I would think that, I think Josh's comment about customer acquisition is a really important one, and I think that all the modern successful startups are really innovating not just on the product side, but also on acquiring customers at scale in parts of the market that haven't been addressable in the past, and small business being a great example of that. But I think actually the concept of competition also changes along with that. Like, we don't view ourselves as really having competition. Like, I'm sure they're there. There are lots of places that do expense reports and things, but the vast majority of people who adopt Expensify we're not doing some sort of competitive analysis and like evaluating us versus options. They're just basically, and maybe to Josh's point about, they're not waiting for one of the companies to come knocking on their door. Everyone adopts Expensify because someone in their company hates expense reports so much that they just go ahead and download our app for free, and they sort of get all the coworkers on board, and then they will sort of surround the finance team with pitchforks and torches and say, like, we need to adopt this. And then the finance team's like, this is actually pretty awesome. And then they realize it's like, oh, okay, well, we have the system in place, the employees like it, we're the top partner, one of the top partners in apps.com, and so things like this, they validate a variety of things, they learn about the product, and see, everyone wins here, why don't I just adopt? And so at no time does anyone say, it's like, wait, let me go check out 20 more options, because it's like, why? Why would I check out 20 more options? This is just fine. And so I think that from a competitive standpoint, we don't really feel like we're competing against basically the alternatives because they're just not part of the conversation. It's like people either stick with what they're using or they learn about us and they adopt. And so we're really about trying to adopt this massive greenfield opportunity, which is very different than the classic acquisition.
One thing I would add, and also I think to get to your question on the company building side, but one other trend that I think hopefully is helpful to everyone in the audience too is this thing I alluded to, which is employees now shift across companies fairly frequently. And a lot of these tools and technologies were built for a world where lifetime employment was the norm. And so, for example, at Gusto, I know definitely at Expensify, we think of the employer and the employee as equal stakeholders, right? They both get their own dashboard. When you join a company, you get an email that says, congrats on joining Acme Corp. Here's your lifetime account where you can now centralize this information. If I ask many of you where your pay stubs are from a previous job, they're probably not very accessible to you today. So that actually does impact go-to-market. We think and we know a lot of our growth is driven by the employee side, word of mouth, sharing that with others as they move across businesses. The one anecdote I'll share on the company building side, startup life is incredibly intense because we have this incredibly audacious goal to serve millions of companies around the world of all sizes, in light of a lot of existing folks out there that are much bigger than us. But I have something I always say, and it's I think Silicon Valley in particular celebrates heroics too much. Heroes become martyrs, right? You have to, if you're building a scalable business, create a way for you to actually have people be responsible for something, not have to save the day every week or every month. Otherwise, it won't actually scale.
Yeah, nice thought. Interested to hear your thoughts, Hemant. I mean, obviously you are funding some of these companies themselves, but funding companies generally, and that sort of idea of, no, there's not really competition, it's a greenfields opportunity. How does that resonate when you're hearing that?
So, 10 years ago, we would have sort of, in our investment meetings, we'd talk about enterprise opportunities and consumer opportunities. And then now there's this whole sort of small business segment that has emerged. I think when we think a lot about, well, what does that really mean? For us, small businesses are much more akin to consumers than enterprises. And a lot of the commentary that Josh and David have been saying, I think those are behaviors of consumers, right? You don't run RFP processes as a consumer. I mean, you sort of use word of mouth, you look at products that you hear about through your peers, and that's what you end up using. So these companies just fundamentally get built differently, and that's why competition doesn't, in some ways, matter as much. And for us, we think this is an amazing area. So we've invested in BigCommerce, again, Gusto, Stripe, Fundbox. These are all companies where they can grow as fast as consumer businesses, but the consumer on the other side is the business owner, so they pay like businesses. So I think the economics, the velocity, it's all sort of really, really compelling. As long as you can find large enough market niches, and as long as you can solve the customer acquisition problem. I think a lot of what, your sort of ecosystem approach, I think what it's done is it's really accelerated opportunities in the space, because you can at least sort of bootstrap off of the platform to start to get the initial customers, and then eventually you have to go build your direct business. But those opportunities just weren't available before, and how do we access small businesses?
I mean, that interesting opportunity thing raises something that could be seen as a threat for platform players like Intuit and Google, which is that you create this environment where awesome companies like Expensify and Gusto can get going and build traction, and all of a sudden they're actually slightly toxic to the parent platform. So I'm going to come back to the Intuit and Google after I talk to you, Hemant, and the companies here around what your thoughts are, that slight toxicity to the larger platforms over time of this plethora of startups.
I think the day that Google and Intuit are afraid of us is a great day. Looking forward to that one. But no, I don't actually think I quite understand the premise at all. I don't know what's toxic at all about our joint success.
Well, because these are suite providers, and all of a sudden the suite is being unbundled, as being disaggregated, and you're providing parts of the suite. So the whole suite opportunity is smaller because of it.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's nothing but joint win all around. And so I think that, I guess because, Intuit supports more options than just Expensify. Conceivably there's a competitive element there, and I guess maybe because we support more accounting packages than just QuickBooks, maybe there's a competitive element, but I don't know. I think the market's moving towards QuickBooks Online. I think that we think the market's moving towards us. There's a lot of other options out there, which I think will fill in the cracks. But again, I don't know. I think we're great friends.
I'd add a few points. Google is also one of our investors, so we have two of our investors on the panel today with us.
You're surrounded.
Exactly.
You should be careful.
No, we love our investors. Maybe 2 points to get to maybe some of the complexity you're alluding to. So if a platform provider were to be biased and or pick winners, I think that would create a dynamic where they would actually be antagonistic with their own ecosystem. I don't think QuickBooks is doing that. I don't think other folks are doing that. I don't think Google is doing that. If they were, we would tell them, because I think for them to get the trust of a developer means that they are here to help serve the customer and be open. If there's a product, i.e. like accounting, that's their product, then obviously that's very clearly something that they deem core. So I think the transparency piece is really important to any ecosystem provider, as long as they're transparent about what they deem core and are not kind of picking favorites per se, perhaps due to behind the scenes decisions. It can continue to be a really vibrant collaboration. And then 2 is, I guess back to my comment on if there is overlap in what is core between two companies, I don't know, to me it still comes back to who can serve the customer best. And I love that. Mm-hmm. If that's the challenge to me and to David and to other entrepreneurs, to go build the best products, serve the customer the best, have the highest NPS, have the greatest customer satisfaction, that's how I want to compete in this market.
Well, and actually, and to build on that point, I think that's one of the great things about small business startups like Expensify and Gusto and others, is we build products in a completely different way than the classic enterprise. Historically, enterprise products are built to be used by a decision maker who will never ever use the product. It's built to be sold to someone who will never actually use it. Whereas we build a product designed to be used by the end user, and then that user pulls us into the sale. And so it's a completely different process of product development that trickles down to the entire organization. And I think that's why we can be so aligned on the customer success, is because our business model benefits from it. Whereas historically, enterprise software, the end user didn't matter. They were just kind of irrelevant to the process.
Also, I would say, I think going back to my point earlier, which is these are consumers, even though they're small business owners. If you look at the behavior and how consumers adopt apps, choice is paramount. I don't think there's going to be any platform that ends up being full stack. And where this is headed is you're going to see, sort of category-specific applications that really delight the customers, to use sort of your own metaphors. Mm-hmm. And you want these products to be developed in a way that they are interoperable with each other, which is a lot of sort of that platform mindset. Intuit's earned the right to be a platform because they serve millions of customers, and companies like Expensify and Gusto can sort of build on that and give that seamless experience to the customer. But that is what the customer is going to want. That is what the future is. And if these guys can become the platforms of the future, I don't think this is a one platform point. Just like in consumer, I don't think Facebook and Google it could be sort of one company. You want choice in the kinds of things, the utilities that you're looking for.
So Avi, how much
Yeah.
do you think about that sort of picking winners? Because obviously Intuit has made acquisitions, and it's a super sensitive area. What goes on internally around
Yeah,
that?
so I think this is exactly what Josh was saying, where we define the core, right? So what are our core, and how can we enable our core to provide the functionalities that we need? We made a clear statement that we are open platform, and we are behind that 100%. And we're integrating for any applications that are not considered to be part of our core. And the core is really the accounting engine, the accounting capabilities. Everything outside of that is probably something that we're trying to find a variety of application to provide the choice, right, to the different small business. The one thing that we have an advantage, and I think this is something that, and I see competition or cooperation, is that we can complement each other. Intuit has access to small businesses, and sometimes, I get a call from, I was working at Google, and Mash and I worked together, and I got a call after I joined Google, and they were asking me, hey, can you help us penetrate the small business? And the first question I asked was, what do you mean small business? And he said, 10 stores and higher. And 10 stores and higher. And I said, okay, that's not really small business for us. So it took us 2 years, and now we're talking with Google about how can we actually leverage the assets that they have, the assets that we have, and try to really to address the solution to that segment of market. So I think we can be complementary. One thing I would add, Ben, is that I think that from for us, I think about the evolution of our product, not only as the QuickBooks, the app, is the QuickBooks, the platform. And we think about many other business capabilities that we create with that platform. So that's why we think that the variety, the choice that we can give to the customers is very important, because that's today's business, and tomorrow's business will be completely different. So we're trying to think a little bit more future about how this platform will take us to the next generation of business.
Okay. I mean, we're seeing a huge amount of investment in the space. VC dollars, investment anywhere. VC dollars are pouring into everything, but particularly fintech. So two-part question. Is fintech just the flavor of the day, and is that going to kind of calm down? And more broadly, when's the bubble going to burst? So I'll talk to everyone to get their impressions on that. Avi, I might as well start with you. So you're here.
So what you are basically asking, fintech is a bubble, and
is fintech a bubble, and the broader bubble, when is that going to burst?
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure if I want to share my view of what's going on in Silicon Valley today, if it's a bubble or not. I think that a smart guy told me in the past that when things are glowing, enjoy the time and let it glow as much as you can. So I'm looking forward to not having a bubble and really start living the dreams that we can do even more. I actually don't feel that we're in a bubble. I think that there's some hype over there. There's something, but it seems to be controlled. It seems to be very focused, and it seems that the money is contributed to the right places in the industry. So I truly believe that fintech can be successful.
Hemant?
So, I mean, I agree with Avi. I think we feel like there's a bubble because there's something really special going on. I think you did not see companies ever growing 5, 10x year over year over year. What's been happening sort of the last 4 or 5 years with, a category of companies. I think what that does is it opens up the spigot in terms of capital, but it's very nuanced. There are a category of companies that are fast growing, large market opportunities, great unit economics. And then there's, some companies that will struggle because the unit economics aren't great, and, capital at some point does become more disciplined. But I don't think this is bubble. I think there's a systemic change. Small business is a brand new category. The idea of sort of rethinking financial services with a customer-centric lens and a data-centric lens where you're redefining risk, I think that sort of blows up that entire stack. And so you're seeing categories of companies getting built in that area. I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. This is going to continue for a while. This is systemic.
I would say the access to cheap capital has probably encouraged some incredibly inefficient spend on customer acquisition. And so I think that we'll probably see once sort of capital efficiency becomes more weighted into the valuations, that a lot of the companies out there that have posted these massive valuations merely as a consequence of their ability to raise enormous quantities of money, but not necessarily build viable businesses underneath them. I think some of those could topple, and I think there might be some cascading effects with that. But I also think that with the exception of maybe some humiliation from some of these companies, I don't know that's going to have a large effect upon the market overall. So it's not like a bubble where basically it's like this really fragile marketplace that's going to collapse all at once. I think that we have some tall towers that might fall over, but I think fundamentally the market's okay.
Yeah, and I agree about the cheap capital, but in terms of fintech, it's an enormous industry that frankly needs to be reformed. I mean, there's just so much opportunity for disruption in fintech that it's hard for me to imagine that that wave's over. Now, yeah, some companies may fall or there may be problems because they have been overfunded, but in general, it's a large industry, it's heavily regulated, it's archaic in how it operates. I mean, even the industry participants themselves agree there's enormous opportunity there. So fintech, I think, will continue. It's also interesting, the digitization of industry. For the first time, we now have companies, on average, their IT budgets are larger outside of the CIO's office than inside. You go back a few years ago and that wasn't true. I mean, this is a pretty fundamental shift that's still got a good 5 to 10 years to run. And so while we may be overvalued, we may have some bubble tendencies without a doubt, the underlying trends are still very strong for the growth of the technology industry.
So I'm not a venture capitalist or a financial analyst, but I have my own opinion. I feel like the nature of the bubble itself has changed. When you described a bubble, it was a phenomenon where a phenomenon that can take down an entire sector or an entire industry. I think the dynamics of the industry have changed enough where we are moving away from this crowd behavior where you're buying on-premise licenses, you're buying long-term licenses, where you can actually see those trends, ups and downs for the entire industry or the entire sector. Now, all these companies are pioneering the software as a service. Now the payments, it's pay as you go. And I think the dynamics have changed enough that there may be a rush of capital flowing into some specific industries or some specific business models which have proven to be successful. But I think as far as the bubble that can describe a tech bubble, I think is not relevant anymore. There may be micro bubbles, is what we should be talking about.
So David brought up and everyone in this room is a developer building a product or has got a product and is thinking about customers. And you brought up the thing about being really efficient in terms of your sales process and understanding your funnel and those sorts of things. So we've got different perspectives here. We've got obviously large vendor marketplace perspectives and startup or ecosystem player perspectives. Interested to hear your thoughts around how that pipeline can be made most efficient, what you're doing to fill that funnel and to drive it most efficiently, and what the marketplaces as well are doing to really help the companies to fill their funnel. So Dave, you got your microphone ready to go?
Sure, I'm always ready. I guess I would say maybe just working backwards. I think that now that some of these startups are getting to the public markets and we're realizing, the public markets are not really valuing massively inefficient customer acquisition as they were expected to. I think that there were business models built around the idea of showing huge revenue gains by just moving money from like their left pocket to their right pocket. And like, yeah, I made $1 million and it only cost me $2 million to get, sort of thing. And that works, and I think that that sort of business model is losing its allure. And so I think that buying revenue is easy if you're willing to just to spend more than that to get it. And so the challenge is basically building revenue in a cost-effective and scalable way. Now, the way that we do it is we've found this neat trick where basically employees really hate their expense reports. And they know everyone in the company who hates it as well, and all their friends hate expense reports. And so there's this great word of mouth capability that we can capture through a free mobile app. Basically, the idea is that you just download Expensify. It doesn't cost you anything. We love you as a submitter because you're a lead generator to us, because you actually promote us through the act of submitting an expense report, put us in touch with the decision maker who has even more problems than you do, except they don't know they can do anything about it. And so I think that our entire model of customer acquisition is inherently based around partnering with the end user who experiences the pain, and then having them pull us into the sale. We feel that word of mouth is the most scalable of all possible customer acquisition channels because it reaches everyone in the market, not just those who happen to look at ads. It's also the most cost effective because it doesn't cost anything. The challenge is it's also hard to sort of influence in a paid way. So whereas everyone else can post, can just spend $1 million and then get $500,000 in revenue or whatever, for us we have to earn that. But it makes the cost effectiveness of this is so much more potent, I would say. And I think that the long-term reach is there. That's why partners like Intuit, I think, are so important because they have the deep roots in the industry. Like they are the foundation of the industry. And so for us, we want to make sure that we're building a business that's going to be here forever, just like they are.
Josh,
I was gonna say, I used to run a panel series at Stanford, and we had Elon Musk come and speak, and he asked the question, how do you create a small fortune? And people try to come up with all these crazy answers. The answer is you start with a large fortune. Right, so to your point, I think there's a lot of ways to waste money in startups. Maybe you're asking partially about metrics. I think it's not rocket science, like gross margin, profitability, like customer acquisition cost. Like these are the metrics of how anyone builds a business, and sometimes they just get lost amidst a lot of the chatter. My commentary on the Valley is that it comes in cycles. I mean, I was born and raised here. That core of solve a real problem and understand are you actually making a difference for your customer stays remarkably consistent. And the fluff is what comes and goes over time. It impacts traffic, it impacts housing prices. That's kind of obviously affecting everyone, but solving a real problem is very much the core.
So from the platform side, I can tell you what Google is doing on the Google Apps Marketplace. First of all, you need to help companies discover these apps easier. So that's where the new launch of the Google Apps Marketplace, I don't know what we call it, but there's a new version out in the market where we made it easier to discover new apps. For instance, if you're opening a document in Google Docs, we offer in-product promotion, offering a slew of other apps that are in the marketplace that you can actually use. So that increases the discoverability of new apps that are coming in. We also started curating more of the apps and giving a curated experience. There are many more filters. For example, you can find apps that are tightly integrated with Google Apps ecosystem and Google Apps. So we're doing a bunch of things to actually make it easy for people to find information. We're also giving more security for the IT administrator who's actually making a decision on deploying these for the business. By giving OU level controls. We're trying to remove the friction as much as possible. So when a user at work makes a decision about an application that they would like to install, that we are removing the IT administrator as a friction point. So there's a bunch of different things we are doing on the Google Apps Marketplace side to actually promote more newer apps that are coming to the market and getting them discovered.
So we are almost out of time, and I'm aware that we're all stand between you and lunch, even though you're closer to lunch than we are, so that didn't actually make sense. But what I'm going to ask the panelists is to give a 10-second response, which I know is really hard because they like talking. 10-second response. If you were a developer in this room today, what would be the problem in fintech, the problem for SMBs that you would ideally be tackling, or you think is the biggest opportunity? Start with you, Avi.
I see a big trend in lending today becoming very, very critical. So I would say that.
Okay, good answer. Matt.
I think one area of fintech that hasn't been cracked as much is insurance.
Yeah, true. Apart from expense reports?
Wow, 10 seconds. Let's see here, I need to think. I don't know, I think that there are good apps across the board, and so it's just very hard to find something new, and so I would find another industry.
Awesome. Word.
If you want to come talk to me after, I can give you ideas, but my core answer is it has to be a problem you're obsessed with, believe in, and can imagine spending decades working on. So don't listen to other people. Like, see a problem you care deeply about. The chatter in the Valley is, I think, a distraction for the most part.
I want to revise my answer because I really love his, and I think that any idea that you hear, or the best idea is going to be something that sounds completely stupid. Because if it doesn't sound stupid, someone would have already done it. Now the problem is most stupid ideas don't just sound stupid, they actually are stupid. And so the only way you know is by trying it. So yeah, I think to Josh's point is find something that just excites you. Don't pay attention to anyone else. Don't ask them. Just go for it. You might change and pivot along the way, but in the end, you'll either find an idea that is great, or you'll learn something really illustrative.
Can you revise mine?
That was,
Josh and
that was
David, I love
45,
yours.
45 seconds. Wait, Mahesh, your turn.
I would follow what Josh is saying. Really find something really passionate about. 99% of things that we accomplish today were thought through with an older technology in mind. It was thought through at a different time and space. Now there are newer tools, newer technologies, newer capabilities, so you can completely reinvent anything that you have a passion for and bring that to the market.
Cool. Last word is yours, Steve.
Vertical markets. Insurance was mentioned, but a lot of vertical markets have needs. Agriculture, food, the pet industry, $54 billion industry. So make your app for pets.
Awesome. Thanks for your thoughts, panelists. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy your lunch.